The greatest invention of humanity, the story of money. 1. Early money. Pause for a second and imagine a world without money. People live in small communities, producing what they need and exchanging their surplus with their neighbors. Back then, things were very simple. Who gave what to whom, who received what, and many similar things were kept in memory. Everything was recorded in people's minds. But as societies grew, this system started to become insufficient. Trade and exchange increased, people no longer knew each other as before. And when rulers started collecting taxes, everything became even more complicated. Keeping everything in mental records was now almost impossible. At this point, people tried to find a solution: IOUs, meaning debt notes. But there was a problem. If you didn't know the person issuing the note, how could you trust them? That's why people started using certain objects as value carriers. For example, whale teeth. In other words, these objects became physical symbols of trust. This allowed people to trade with strangers. They could even carry purchasing power into the future. And what is interesting is this: people unknowingly invented debt at the same time they invented money. 2. Metal money. As time passed, different things started being used as money: barley, feathers, shells, whale teeth. But soon everyone realized something: none of these were suitable as real money. Barley spoils and is heavy. Whale teeth are hard to divide. Shells are everywhere, so they are not scarce. Feathers are not accepted by everyone. So money needed certain properties. It had to be durable, portable, divisible, and universally accepted. There was also a power dimension. Money means power. Those who have more money gain power, and those with power gain more money.
Seeing this, kings began minting coins made of gold and silver. They stamped them with seals to guarantee their value. Metal money had all the required properties. It was durable and made trade with other communities easier. But when the human factor came into play, the system started to break down. Some rulers reduced the size of coins or mixed cheaper metals into them. So over time, money began turning into something less trustworthy.
3. Paper money. Coins were good, but they were extremely heavy. Carrying sacks of metal money during trade was very difficult. Chinese rulers found a practical solution. Let's store the money in warehouses and issue paper instead. This way, people did not carry physical money. Instead, they carried a document representing it. Of course, these paper notes had no intrinsic value, but they were valuable because they represented gold and silver. The entire system was based on trust. As trade expanded, this idea spread around the world, but along with it, concerns also grew. What if someone prints money as much as they want? Because of this, they considered linking money to gold, known as the gold standard. This system continued for a long time, but eventually the economy had to become more flexible. In the 1970s, the world completely abandoned the gold standard. Today, the only thing that makes a banknote valuable is people's belief in it. 4. Controlling money. Now, let's go to Yap Island in the Pacific. On Yap, massive stones called rye stones are used as money. Rye stones were actively used as the main currency in daily trade until the early 20th century. Even today, they are not completely out of use. Among locals, they still change hands in important traditional cases, such as land transactions, bride price, or resolving major disputes between villages. For everyday shopping today, however, the official currency is the US dollar. These stones are so large that they are usually never moved. Because they are massive and heavy, they do not physically change location. Instead, people change ownership through conversation. They simply say, "This stone belongs to me." So once again, an economy based entirely on trust and records emerges. Later on, people begin using debt notes against these stones. This marks the birth of banking. But as the system grows, control becomes harder. Money is no longer physical. It operates through records and trust. In the 20th century, debates begin. Who should control the money supply? In the modern world, most money is created not by governments, but by banks.
5. Money and inflation.
In the 16th century, Spain brings massive amounts of gold and silver from America.
At first, people in Spain are very happy. They think they are extremely rich. But after a while, they realize this is not the case. Because when money becomes abundant in the market, prices rise as well. Even though everyone has much more money, purchasing power does not really change. In fact, most people find themselves worse off. Only indebted people benefit, because the real value of their debt decreases. This situation introduces the basic idea of inflation for the first time in history. If money increases too much, prices also increase.
6. International money. By the 18th century, everything becomes global rather than local. The British tell their American colonies, "You will pay your taxes in pounds." But there is a small problem. The colonies cannot print their own money. In other words, if you want to increase your money supply, you are forced to trade with Britain. This restriction leaves the colonies with no breathing space. People like Benjamin Franklin explained that one of the main causes of the Independence War was this economic pressure. Eventually, America gains independence and creates its own currency, the dollar. As America grows, trust in the dollar also increases. Over time, the dollar stops being just an American currency and becomes the world's main reserve currency. Ironically, even Britain begins storing dollars. In short, the America that escaped British control eventually becomes the center of global economic power.
7. The rise of banks.
By the 19th century, banking is no longer just a storage place for money. It becomes a serious business. The logic is simple. They collect money at low interest and lend it at higher interest. But then, banks realize something very important. As long as everyone does not withdraw their money at the same time, they can lend out even money that is not physically in their vaults. This is called fractional reserve banking.
In other words, banks can circulate money that does not physically exist in their reserves. But this system is risky. What happens if everyone demands their money at once? That is when the bank collapses. This is called a bank run. In the 2007 financial crisis, banks like Northern Rock experienced exactly this. Not just one or two banks, but the entire system was shaken. After this crisis, governments stepped in and guaranteed deposits. This allowed banks to lend much more freely.
8. Money and savings.
After the 2008 crisis, economists divided money into two categories: money created inside the banking system and money created outside by governments. When banks issue loans, they actually create new money, but this also creates debt. The system balances itself internally. Governments, on the other hand, create money by issuing bonds. This does not create private debt, but instead public debt. During the crisis, governments stepped in and absorbed banks' bad debts. This allowed the private sector to survive, but the burden shifted to the public sector. In short, risk inside the system was transferred outside.
The power of money. With the complete end of the gold standard in 1973, a new era began. From then on, money was no longer tied to anything physical. Yet, the world still stubbornly continued using the US dollar. During the 2008 crisis, the US injected massive amounts of money into the economy. Normally, this should have reduced the dollar's value, but it did not. Because the dollar was not just a currency, it had become a system of trust. Most of the world held its wealth in dollars, and because everyone believed others would also trust the dollar, the system reinforced itself. So the power of the dollar did not come from gold or backing, but from collective belief. 10. The future of money. Today, coins and paper money are almost becoming history. The vast majority of transactions no longer use physical cash. With online banking, credit cards, and digital systems, money now moves across the world in seconds. And now, a new era has begun: digital currencies. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin try to replicate the core properties of money: limited supply, portability, divisibility, and security. Some even believe they could become an alternative to state-backed currencies. But the reality is this: a currency cannot fully function as real money unless governments accept it for taxation and banks integrate it into lending systems. From a broader perspective, cryptocurrencies today are similar to shells or whale teeth in ancient times, alternative value systems outside the main financial structure. The clearest way to understand whether something is truly money is this: when central authorities and banks start trying to control it. And if they decide to control it, then the real question becomes, how will they use that power?